Hello, beautiful souls. My name is Ria, and I just love astrology. The eighth house. So, the eighth house is the house of sex, intimacy, inheritances, death and rebirth, because it's ruled by Pluto, taxes, shared resources, joint accounts, joint homes. Basically, it's after the merging in the seventh house. What next? That's the eighth house. In the eighth house, it's all about merging of resources. If you look at yourself as a resource and the other person as a resource, that coming together is the joining of resources. That's the eighth house. In the eighth house, things start to get dark. Like if you have your sun in the eighth house, you were born during sunset. In the eighth house, the sun is starting to set. It's not completely dark. Like the 12th house is like the attic or the basement, like that kind of dark. The eighth house is it's kind of like 50 Shades of Grey. What goes on behind closed doors after the marriage, the partnership, like what goes on behind closed doors. You could also see your relationship with your in-laws, what kind of in-laws you're gonna have from the eighth house, because these are things that you see after the contracts have been signed. You've signed out on those dotted lines and you're starting to have a life together. That's when the eighth house is activated. It's a house of deep psychology. In the eighth house, it's all about money and resources. So who you partner with can make or break your eighth house. It's Pluto we're talking about here, and this is Pluto's house. Guys, if you're looking at your birth chart for career, if you're looking at a birth chart for career readings, because you could look at a birth chart for so many things. There's medical astrology, there's career astrology. You could see if a person may or may not end up working with things relating to death, like working in a morgue or a mortuary, or being a psychologist, or being a therapist. Therapy also, you can look at the seventh house for therapy, because the seventh house is just about one-on-one relationship, which therapy can fall into. But therapy as a profession is also very wide, because there are different kinds of therapists. There's the psychotherapists. They're just general GNC guidance and counselors. So when it starts to get darker, that's when you start to look at the eighth house, like morticians, a detective. Someone with the sun in the eighth house is a natural psychologist, is a natural detective. It's God-given for them. It's great if they go pursue that as a career, but you already know. If I see someone with a sun in the eighth house, I already innately kind of know what kind of skills they have naturally. Also, like the moon in the eighth house as well. Investigations, research, astrologers as well. People who like, the occult, midwives, ER nurses. Yeah. And the eighth house is a very complex house. Because it rules your subconscious mind. The 12th house is your unconscious mind, literally. Because the unconscious mind, you have absolutely no idea what's going on in the 12th house. With the eighth house, the things that happen in the eighth house, you know about, but you just do not want people to know. That's why it's a very private house. It's the part of you that you don't want to share. It's the part of you do not show to people. Not because you don't want to, it's because it's subconscious. So you got to be quite careful with your eighth house when it comes to merging with people, because like I said, it's where the light's not very bright. So if you are opening the door, you need to take your time to open that door. The eighth house is the opposite of your second house. And remember that second house rules your resources, your own resources, your personal resources, your personal values, your personal wealth, your possessions. The eighth house is the opposite. So it's other people's possessions. It's other people's values. It's dependent on other people's values, other people's possessions. So in the eighth house, you could lose your possessions that you got from the second house to the other, or you could gain in the eighth house and take it to your second house. So it's a pretty dicey house. It's not a house that a lot of people like to dive into. And as you know, everyone's got an eighth house. Whether you've got planets in there or not, there's a sign ruling your eighth house. It rules inheritances. Inheritances could be physical. If you're inheriting things, you can see that from your eighth house. And this could be physical possessions, or they could just be more like metaphysical, like spiritual things passed down in your bloodline or your lineage. You could also see that from the eighth house, spiritual gifts and talents and skills that just passes down through a bloodline. That you can see that from the eighth house. Or it could be physical possessions as well. It could be inheritances. A transit to your eighth house could mean that, you get a windfall, or you get some sudden money from somewhere, or some inheritance. It's the eighth house, which is a house of death and rebirth. And most times for something to be passed down, someone's got to die, right? So that's why it's a very complex house. It's not a house that a lot of people like to dive into. It's a house of taxes as well, because tax is collected by, the higher authorities, and that's their money. It's other people's money. That's the eighth house. Yeah, you could see a lot of careers in the eighth house. You could see accountants. Accountants deal with other people's money. You could see stockbrokers, investment bankers. You can see therapists that I talk about here in the eighth house. So if you do also, like, with a person with a sun in the eighth house, is a person who can easily be overlooked, because again, the sun is it's not at its highest point. It's not in a very bright place. And a person like that could end up being in a relationship where they get overlooked, walked all over, sidelined, kind of. Like, there's a lot of power dynamics happening in the eighth house. It's Pluto. So Pluto's all about power. It's all about. But the thing about Pluto is Pluto would break you down to build you back up stronger. That's how Pluto works. Pluto it's not about destruction. It destroys what's not true. It destroys what's not solid. It destroys what's ungrounded to build it back up, to build back something that's true. That's Pluto. Pluto's not just, all about destroying things. No, Pluto only destroys what's not true. Pluto only destroys what's not real, what's false. And that's what Pluto does. Yeah. So in the eighth house, things, always need to change. That's it. It doesn't matter what sign is there. The sign's just only going to tell you the manner in which that change is going to come. But the inherent structure of the eighth house is about change. It's about death and rebirth. You can see things like betrayals, generosity, giving to other people, receiving from other people. If you have a planet like Jupiter in the eighth house, you could receive a lot from joint resources. Like when you join your resources with a partner, it could benefit you a great deal. Venus there could show that you tend to get things like gifts, pleasure, and all of that from a partner. Mars there can mean conflict, divorce. Divorce is also in the eighth house as well. So yeah, that's the eighth house. It's like secret societies. It's the occult. It's mystical knowledge. It's taboo. Things that the society sees as taboo, what people don't like to talk about, but it does exist. The fact that people don't talk about it doesn't mean it doesn't exist. It happens in like day to day. But yeah, it's just very psychological. It's just a house that it's not very easy to have a grasp on. So it's better to not talk about it. That's how most people see it. It's like, okay, I don't know so much about this thing, so I don't want to have anything to do with it, kind of. And people just like to not dive deep into it, because eighth house issues affect you on a very deep emotional level. It's psychology. So everything that's happening in the eighth house would affect you deeply. So a strong eighth house could indicate a strong joint account, like a strong merging of finances, like building something that's long lasting. And a weak one could indicate the opposite as well. In ancient times, the eighth house used to be used to judge dowry. I think in ancient India. Yeah, so it's like if you are marrying someone with a strong eighth house, it's like an indication that you're gonna receive financial benefit from that marriage, and then technically you're gonna have to pay a higher dowry. It was just to judge dowries in the, and you can see why. So that's the eighth house, and next we're gonna do the ninth house.